Hi, I'm Ember. I'm teaching empty knots in flow. We talked about what an empty knot is, which is when you look like you're all tied up. Observe, but you're not. And the way that works is that you're creating a rope path and going back over it so that what you really have is a straight line, which you can shoot out. Okay. So the first knot we talked about 5 two-step knots, so 2 rope paths carrying across your body, and 2 3-step knots. And the first one we talked about was rolling dragon. We talked about terminology. This is guide hand hip, guide hand shoulder is over the arm, anchor hand shoulder, anchor hand hip here. So rolling dragon goes from your guide hand's hip to your anchor hand shoulder like this. Step 2 is right back over that same line from your anchor hand shoulder to your guide hand's hip like this. And then you need to drop the thumb loop, and it should come right out like that. At speed, you can also do a turn so you don't have to have an awkward stop. Looks like that. The next two-step knot that we talked about, I'm just looking at my notes, was the waist to shoulder. So you create this waist wrap by shooting out to your guide side and clipping as you pendulum back here. Then you're going to have anchor hip to guide shoulder, do a block grip like this. We spoke about the block grip versus the offering grip. And I want to do a block grip. And shoot it out as you drop this thumb loop. So at speed, waist to shoulder. The next one is very similar. It's that same waist wrap, only now you're going under your legs. It's as if you're doing a waist wrap and then bringing it straight back around to undo it. So let me show you that. Waist wrap and clip. And then we're going to go right back around the other way using the left leg, under the left leg, under the right leg, and obviously this will be reversed for lefties. Drop this, so you have that waist wrap back counterclockwise, and then shoot it out. At speed. We also talked about variations on this knot, wherein you can clip the middle part if you like, or just go straight under. Okay. We talked about suicide empty knots. This is a suicide, where it crosses my throat. This is a half suicide, where it does not cross my throat. And a suicide empty knot is when you do a half suicide and clip it, and then you do a half suicide the other way and let it go. Okay? This is another knot where you can turn to make that sort of come undone a little more easily. And you can do it from any direction. I'm doing it from my native guide side. I can also do it from my other side. Okay. And the final two-step knot we went over is butterfly burst from cocoon, where you're going to cast out to your guide side like this. Place the line behind your head here, and then throw this right from the hip under your arm to create this. Okay? And then anchor hip to guide shoulder in a block grip. drop this thumb loop as usual, but bring your hand up over your head, around in front like this, to get it undone. Okay? So at speed, place it on your neck, under your elbow, anchor, hip, guide, shoulder, drop the loop overhead. So those are our 2-step knots. And then we also covered 2 3-step knots, starting with the cross back, which is anchor, shoulder, guide, hip. It's kind of sticking on my skin right now because it's so humid. Into that same waist wrap and clip, and then anchor, hip, guide, shoulder. We're going to do an offering grip for this one. Out and over. Alright, speed. The reason that it's called the cross back because you get this lovely little cross on your back. Hope you can see that. Alright. The illusionist, guide, hip, anchor, shoulder, also known as monk cast beads, that particular rope path. Then we're going to pass it over the guide, the anchor elbow, I'm sorry, and back under. Creating this weird thumb thing. Like the here again. And then back over anchor, hip to guide, shoulder. Right? Loose both of these off the thumb. You don't have to bring your hand over. It is a block grip. Bam. Yeah. So at speed, the illusionist. Okay. So those are our empty knots for the empty knots and flow class. We also talked about a little bit about flow and about getting extra beats out of empty knots. So for example, if we were going to do that, waist strap to under the legs. Generally, if you're learning, you're brand new at it, you kind of have to take a second, do a couple of beats, remember what the next step is, do that, do a couple more beats, remember what the next step is, okay, do that. Alright, now we're set, drop the thumb loop, and go. And we talked about flow as a process of deciding where your beats should go, and being able to, if you want, do this whole thing without having to do the extra beats. Or being able to say, create like a sentence and stop here and say, oh, now I want to go into an anti-spin. Now I want to do some stalks. Now I'm going to do that next step and come out. So those two processes are mostly what I went over there. And I think that's it for empty knots and flow.